Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're throwing on our investigative hats and acting as scientific detectives. Our mission? To figure out exactly how we know what we know about human psychology. How do we move beyond just, guessing why people do what they do and actually prove it?
So let's start with a classic human dilemma. Imagine the frustration of wondering if your hard-earned money can actually buy true internal joy and peace. This is exactly what was famously investigated by Professor Elizabeth Dunn. She really wanted to know, fundamentally, if spending money on others creates more happiness than spending it on yourself. It's a huge question, right?
To answer massive, complex questions like this, researchers can't just rely on their gut feelings. They have to use specific methodologies. Essentially, they're holding up a scientific mirror to human nature, just like Sigmund Freud once described. We absolutely need a rigorous framework to reveal these shared patterns accurately.
Today, we're diving into the strategic blueprint scientists use to gather data. We'll be looking at 4 essential tools. 1. Finding clues with correlations. 2. Proving cause with experiments. 3. Asking the crowd through surveys. And 4. The long game of tracking.
Part 1. Finding clues with correlations.
Okay, so this first tool is all about observing the natural environment to spot emerging patterns, totally without interfering. A correlation is basically a statistical measure that quantifies the degree and direction to which 2 separate variables naturally fluctuate together. When Professor Dunn surveyed citizens about their income and charitable habits, her data revealed a distinct positive correlation. This means giving and happiness systematically rise together. But she hit a roadblock. This pattern alone couldn't prove whether altruism actually caused the joy, or if happy people just naturally tend to give more.
To understand how vital this is, think critically about your own life for a quick second. Have you ever noticed your friends, or maybe your family, losing sleep because they spend way too much time on their phones? Well, an April 2026 report specifically examined this real-world connection between social media scrolling and sleep deprivation among college sophomores.
And wow, that study found a powerful positive correlation of 0.65. Now, scientists use a correlation coefficient ranging from -1 to +1, so a 0.65 is quite strong. It clearly demonstrated that late-night screen time directly matches severe daytime exhaustion. It creates this really dangerous cycle of fatigue, especially for non-traditional working students who are already juggling crazy stressful schedules. But as this brilliantly illustrates, we absolutely must remember a fundamental rule of psychology. Correlation never implies a direct path of cause and effect. Unmeasured third variables might just be hiding in the shadows, driving that statistical connection. As Carl Pearson noted, correlation is just a guide to hidden connections, but it remains a shadow until an experiment sheds light on its true source. To find that true source, we have to dig a whole lot deeper.
Which brings us to part 2, proving cause with experiments. To step out of those shadows and isolate the exact culprit behind human behavior, researchers pull out their absolute most rigorous tool. The crucial distinction here is all about intervention. While correlational designs simply watch natural occurrences without any direct intervention, experimental designs empower scientists to systematically manipulate an independent variable and track the subsequent changes. It's kind of like the difference between just watching a plant grow and actively changing how much water it gets to see what happens.
So, to finally prove her money and happiness theory, Elizabeth Dunn ran an actual experiment in Vancouver. An experiment is a rigorous scientific method where researchers intentionally manipulate an independent variable to observe its precise effects on a dependent variable. She randomly assigned unsuspecting people to groups. One group was told to spend the $20 windfall entirely on themselves, while the other group was instructed to use it altruistically on someone else.
Now, here is the crucial point. Because she eliminated baseline happiness differences and personal habits through that random assignment, the massive measurable surge in the altruistic group's well-being confidently established direct causality. Causality is that directional relationship where one specific event directly produces a distinct change in another. She proved that the spending style was the literal direct source of joy, successfully inferring an authentic cause and effect relationship.
Of course, we have to acknowledge that true random assignment isn't always physically possible. Sometimes it even crosses ethical boundaries in a real-world setting. In those cases, researchers rely on quasi-experiments. This is an investigative design that compares pre-existing groups based on their inherent characteristics. They offer slightly less control than a true randomized experiment, but they are incredibly valuable when a pure lab setting just isn't on the table. Let's look at how experiments play out in a modern academic setting. Think about this.
If your school literally forced you to take a wellness class, would it actually help you reduce anxiety? Well, a May 2026 academic experiment intentionally tested this exact thing by assigning half of an incoming community college cohort to weekly mindfulness training, while the other half just followed their normal schedules.
The results were striking. The final data proved that the structured seminars directly caused a 20% decrease in clinical stress markers right before finals. Because every other environmental factor was kept identical, this study proved the definitive underlying mechanism of the intervention. A 20% drop is a real game changer for those students.
Honestly, the best science often combines these tools. A groundbreaking March 2026 study on digital note-taking beautifully integrated both methodologies. Observational surveys tracked daily study routines, finding that general app usage just correlates with organization. But then, an experimental lab trial assigning specific software tools to freshmen proved that structured interactive platforms actively cause a reduction in cognitive overload during midterms.
Moving right along to part 3, asking the crowd through surveys.
Let's see how gathering mass testimony across vast populations actually works. Surveys are a data collection method using structured questionnaires or interviews to gather self-reported information from a specific population. They're an exceptionally versatile tool, allowing scientists to quickly gather immense volumes of data. Remember when Elizabeth Dunn wanted to map out statistical relationships across a broad cross-section of society where direct lab experiments were physically impossible? She used comprehensive surveys to capture self-reported financial estimates and emotional ratings. We see this versatility everywhere today. A recent June 2026 national survey revealed that over 70% of second-year college students utilize artificial intelligence tools for daily brainstorming. This survey was actually embedded within a broader software study. However, there's a massive catch when using this tool. Researchers must remain highly vigilant against participants altering their responses just to appear a bit more favorable. It's a very common methodological hurdle known as social desirability bias.
Gordon Allport made a brilliant observation about this. He said, "The survey is a window into human belief, yet we must always measure the distortion of the glass. Surveys give us unprecedented access to internal thoughts, but we must constantly account for that distortion in human honesty. If people aren't entirely truthful about their personal habits or academic shortcuts, the data gets skewed. Psychologists literally have to carefully design survey items to minimize this distortion."
Finally, part 4, the long game of tracking.
Okay, so now we transition away from single fleeting snapshots in a laboratory to understand the sheer scope of time-based methodology. Consider a 5-year timeline. In year 1, January 2026, researchers launched a comprehensive project with baseline tracking for first-year students. By year 2, they monitor shifting economic pressures. Year 3 assesses midpoint hybrid workplace demands. Year 4 tracks evolving adult learning success. And year 5 is the final trajectory analysis of adaptability and family support. Early data is already showing that long-term adaptability depends heavily on early family support systems. This intense patient methodology is known as a longitudinal study. It's a research design that tracks and repeatedly assesses the exact same group of individuals over an extended period of time. Now, I won't lie, these studies require massive financial investments, and researchers face the constant threat of participant attrition, meaning people simply dropping out over the years. But despite these hurdles, longitudinal designs are absolutely indispensable for understanding the complex, dynamic interplay of nature and nurture throughout our lives. As Erik Erikson so profoundly stated, we live forward, but we can only truly understand psychological growth by looking back across time. Short-term studies just cannot duplicate this perspective. So, as we wrap up this explainer, which, by the way, was made possible by the incredible educational materials from Noba, the Diener Education Fund, and chapter author Kristi Napaskalin, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought. Considering the powerful tools of psychological tracking we've explored today, how do you think your current experiences will shape your personality and family life 5 years from now? Keep questioning, keep observing, and thanks for exploring the Detective's Toolkit with us.